Okay. Well, I think it's time to start. Um, okay. Today's date is July 22nd, 2025.
Okay. Thank you, Lolly. So, welcome everyone to the 12 steps on the path to freedom. We are recording this presentation. We will not be showing any faces, so don't worry about your anonymity. We won't show your face. If you do respond later on in the question and answers, they'll be able to hear your voice but not see your face. So I hope everyone's comfortable with that. If anyone has any questions, even with anything that we talk about or that comes up in the lessons, whether it's Herb stuff or my stuff, you can always send me an email and I can try to help you through the stuckness that you might come into. Or you can reach out to Rochelle. She is our homework assistant and she's at RochelleCats12@gmail.com. She's also here tonight. If you want to send her a chat, you can do a chat. And we also have Dominique, but she is not here tonight. She had another commitment. We we will potentially be using a timer if we feel that the need arises. Only in the spirit of trying to get everybody's questions in. If people have something that takes a little bit longer, I'm not going to be inclined to just shut you down and stop whatever's going on because a timer goes off. I think it's a great boundary, but I don't want it to be a wall. I want people to feel like they can step up and ask questions. Um, but I do want to remind people that the purpose of the meetings or the workshop is to come to a place where you have a spiritual awakening or at least a lot of spiritual experiences. And we don't get to a place of spiritual experiences or spiritual change by dwelling in the stories that we've created, or other people's stories, or any story for that matter. We really just want to focus on the recovery through our higher power, whatever that term means to each and every person in the room. And if you could join me in the set aside prayer on your own, this is a really good way to start any. I start it with my day. I start it when I'm in a tight spot. I start it when I get in my car. I really try to implement this into a lot of areas in my life, but it's really great for a meeting like tonight. So I'd like to see you guys getting used to using it. And it's really a fantastic go-to prayer for, like I said, just about anything. And it really shows up and makes a difference in your life. You really start seeing things change with it. So, God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, my spiritual path, and you for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my brokenness, my spiritual path, but especially you. And the serenity prayer, please also follow along. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we're in our second class, and this is such deep work. It needs lots of attention. And we need to put our listening caps on. If you guys remember teachers saying that when we were in elementary school, put your listening caps on. And we need to listen, watch, read. It all needs to be done actively, meaning get engaged with this information. Think about the questions that are coming up that I'm presenting to you. And you don't necessarily have to answer the questions that come up, but at least give them some thought. Give them some of your time. Think about, wow, what is she saying? What is she asking? We did go over this last week, but I do want to reiterate it because it's so important. Um, People are more likely to learn new information if they ask themselves, what did I just hear? Did the words make sense to me? Can I define all the words that were used? Do I need to look up a word or two? Or maybe I have assumed something means a particular thing when it actually doesn't. I need to understand what I have heard in order to use the information correctly. I remember a few years back, I was having hearing issues and I wasn't admitting it. And people would talk. And at some point, I would be saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they'd say, yeah, you want to say yes to that? And I thought, my God, I'm not hearing them. And I'm saying yes. So think about what you're hearing and often what you're saying, because it's really important. It's extremely important. And again, ask, what did it mean? What do you think it means? Does your definition make sense in regards to what's being said? Are other people's comments not making sense to what you evaluate of what you've heard? Somebody's answering a question, you're going, that is so far from what I thought the question was. Stop and think about that. Think about how you internalized it. Maybe there was a little misstep there, or maybe you didn't hear the whole question. And how does the information apply to me? Can I be specific in my thoughts? Does it match up with how I'm feeling? Does it reflect the experience I've had? Am I just talking out my butt saying, this is how it happened, when I'm not even really thinking about my answer? I just want to get it answered. And finally, what's your experience? What's my experience? There does come a need for self-awareness when we're talking about foreign ideas, because we're usually thinking about ourselves, not in a self-centered way, but in a self-caring kind of way. But what you will hear in this workshop is my interpretations and others' interpretations of Bill W.'s book. Bill recognized this and mentions it in his book. He tells what he did very specifically and put it on paper. So when I'm reading the big book, I ask myself, what does Bill mean? What is he saying? Does this make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, I ask sometimes Herb or a sponsee, or I'll ask somebody else. I'll read it and say, does this make sense? And when all else fails, I'll Google it. And I often reread it again, and sometimes a third time, because it takes a few times sometimes to get into my head. There's a barrier there that says, don't take in any new concepts. Stick with the old. You know what it is. Just go with that. But I need to understand my experience around what's being said. How does it fit into what I understand? How does it ring true? Is it familiar? Is it not familiar? This is a picture about addiction. It's why we're all here. Richard Rohr, the Franciscan priest and a good friend of Herb's, said people change for one of two reasons: either for great love or great suffering. And unfortunately, sometimes great love turns to great suffering. But 95% of people choose great suffering as their way to learn how to do something different. It's the human dilemma. So this is about all the types of addictions, and I literally can't put them all on the screen, or you wouldn't be able to read them. They'd be so small. There's just so many. And it's why we're all here. Our addictions caused that great suffering that got us to this place. It's a blessing and a curse, because when I start, I cannot stop. And when I stop, I cannot stay stopped. And there's two common distinctions in addiction. There's the process addictions and the substance addictions. When I first heard process addiction in a meeting, I was very confused. I thought, why would somebody get addicted to a process? I can't understand that because process to me is a drudgery. But a process addiction is a behavior. It can include gambling, shopping, eating, sex, internet use, video games, and more. And behavioral addictions may not involve physical withdrawal symptoms like substance addictions, but they can be just as disruptive and harmful. We all know, pretty much all know, substance addiction. This is the type of addiction that involves the compulsive use of substances like alcohol, nicotine, opioids, cocaine, heroin, etc. And for me, I think that food addiction can be behavioral, meaning it can be a process addiction, and it can also be a substance addiction. I think it's one of the ones that can fall under both categories because we can, as a behavior, just eat, not even thinking about what we're eating, but then also as a substance, we use it. So this is a pretty vast fellowship in this group, potentially. But the 12 steps have been utilized to treat all forms of addiction because there is a lot of brokenness out there. And Bill says, besides, our way of living may have its advantages for all people. I mean, even that long ago, this is before all these addictions were even invented. Bill knew that this way of living, this way of seeing things could be for anybody. You didn't have to have an addiction per se. You could just need this in your life because 95% of people are unmanageable. I love this. This is one of Bill W.'s actual pages that he was writing his book from, and you could see his notes and his scratch outs. And Bill knew that this is human methodology. It, like I said, it was developed for alcoholics, but he knew even then that there was maybe even a drug issue that could be potentially worked out through this program. And he had this intuition with his Oxford group experience. It showed him that this is a spiritual exercise for the conversion of a human being, whether alcohol addicted or not. And although alcoholism is a disease of the body and the mind and the will, he put a lot of effort into step 4 in chapter 5 when talking about unmanageability as the spiritual malady. And the problem became very clear in 1939 when he started to write about it. That alcohol is not the problem. Addiction is not the problem. I mean, of course, addiction is a problem. We all know that. We also know that not all of us have abstinence. We're trying to get some form of containment for this deadly disease, but I'm not trying to play down the disease of alcoholism of any other addiction. But Bill knew, and I know too, this point, which is the problem is an issue of bondage of self. Remember Lost Lisa, the woman in chains? So I spent 40 years in bondage, self bondage. My intense fear was all self-induced, all my creation. My thoughts and actions were all mine, although I spent decades convinced it was coming from the outside, from that person, this job, my boss, my broken down car, my awful house, my unruly children. And that kept me even more chained to my fearful mind. And that dark night in the parking lot, it really came to me. It totally consumed me that I had control over nothing but my reactions. to what life was presenting to me. I had a choice, and the choice was to choose darkness or light, faith or fear or faith, freedom or suffering. And the light came on in that parking light, and it has stayed on. That was my spiritual awakening. So when we look at the 12 steps, we see it says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. That was my result of these steps, of my collective spiritual experiences, my spiritual steps showing up as spiritual experiences, which then accumulated into a spiritual awakening. My steps were my spiritual experience, not just the steps as in 12 steps, but every step I took. The journey that I was walking included so many spiritual events that by the time I was under that light in that parking lot, it was inevitable that there was going to be a spiritual awakening. It was either going to be that or I probably was going to perish. So it's not only possible, it's inevitable, it's inescapable that spiritual experiences will lead to a spiritual awakening. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you how, but I can tell you that that's how it works. It's like walking up a set of stairs. You are going to get to the landing at the top of the stairs. It's just the way it works. And it's important to realize that it's done to us, not by us, but not without us. So important. And that means we can't do it alone. Even when we're having the spiritual experiences, we're not alone. We might not have arrived, but we're not alone. They're nudging us to that place of letting go of all these chains that keep us held back. So the spiritual awakening is the result of the steps. It's the purpose, it's the mission, it's the vision. It's what Bill was trying to tell people. He wasn't necessarily saying, I'm going to tell you how to get sober. He was saying, I'm going to show you how to awaken. And then you'll get sober. So there's not a spiritual side to the 12 steps. There's not a spiritual side to AA, Al-Anon, Coda, Nar-Anon, etc. Because it's all spiritual. No sides. It's a complete, it's a totality. It is a spiritual program. That's what we're doing here. It's all a rocket into that fourth dimension, into a relationship with the spirit, with our higher power, with our God, whatever you choose to call it. And what is the fourth dimension? I missed this a few times through the program too. I remember somebody telling me they were in the fourth dimension, and I thought they meant they had gone off their rocker. But in the context of the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, the fourth dimension refers to a profound spiritual experience that transforms an individual's perception of life, moving them beyond the limitations of addiction and into a state of peace, joy, and service. This experience, often described as a spiritual awakening, is a key aspect of recovery in AA. 12 precise methods, formulas for human conversion, so that there can be a radical shift in the way we think and feel and behave in finding a power other than ourselves. It doesn't necessarily mean God, but the problem is that we were powerless. So whatever is the beacon of your power, that's where we want to be. The key word is spiritual. You are either on the spiritual side or you are on the outside. It's 12 precise methods. It's so important to be able to make this conversion. It's a radical shift. It changes the way we think, the way we feel, the way we behave. In finding that power other than ourselves, it doesn't necessarily mean we just lay down and do nothing and power takes over. It's done with us. It's a co-creation where we co-create with our creator. So the problem is that we are powerless. And at some point, we start to kind of lose any feeling about that word powerless or powerlessness because we hear it so much in the program. It almost becomes meaningless. It's step one, and it's an integral part of recovery. But we do hear it a lot. We'll go through a process in step one over a few weeks or months when we begin step one, and we'll take a look at the process in the substance addiction. But more importantly, we will be looking at unmanageability because this is the human condition. This is what Bill said when he wrote the big book, that it could apply to all people. He just knew that. So these are the percentages. 5 out of 10 people are having a process addiction, which is, like I said, a behavioral addiction, a compulsive engagement in certain behaviors, despite the negative consequences. They can include gambling, shopping, internet, TV, phone, or triggering for triggering a reward in the brain. 1 in 10 people is having a substance addiction, which is a chronic relapsing brain disease characterized by compulsive drug and or alcohol or food seeking and ingesting despite the harmful consequences. But that's not all, because not all human beings are suffering from substance or process addiction, but all human beings are suffering from self-will run riot. And addicts just happen to be the poster child for unmanageability. Self-will run riot, I actually have to stop and say that properly, is the human condition. It's everywhere we look. So in step 10, we see the problem is a problem of the body. The most pressing problem in addiction is the problem of the mind. The doctor's opinion is about the allergy of the body. And then Bill's experience and explanation is that although this is interesting, it's not the most pressing problem. The most pressing is the problem of the mind. The Big Book of AA says that alcoholics can't drink in moderation the way most people can because alcoholics are allergic to alcohol. And this is the basis for calling alcoholism a disease. I find the word allergy might be a bit confusing because we typically think of allergies as an inappropriate immune response that causes swelling, sneezing, itchy eyes, runny nose, and you generally feel miserable. Those symptoms are more likely to be associated with a cat or shellfish, maybe peanuts, but with alcohol addiction. So the use of allergy in the Big Book is idiosyncratic. It is used more generally to mean an abnormal reaction to a substance. Typically, when someone is allergic to something, he has no desire at all to have any more contact with that thing. Nobody wants to pet a cat when their whole face blows up. And people understand allergies, and in particular, they understand that an allergy is a reaction to a substance that only affects some people and may have life-threatening consequences. Furthermore, an allergy is not your fault. Well, it isn't your fault. You still have to do whatever is necessary to avoid your particular allergen. So the comparison, when I looked it up and really put some thought into it, it made more sense. And the allergy does make sense. But I've been in many meetings where people have said, well, I have allergies, but I don't have that, and I don't understand. So this kind of brings you to a place of understanding. Allergy meaning if you need an EpiPen, you shouldn't be near it. Same as alcohol. The most pressing problem in addiction, though, is the problem of the mind. The problem of the body is once I start, I cannot stop. The problem of the mind is once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. Bill promises in step 10 that we are placed in a position of neutrality. We have a protective shield of the spirit. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our mind is now not vulnerable to the obsession. And since we are going to be inclined to think about our addiction, we are not going to engage in it. Therefore, the allergy becomes irrelevant because we are placed in a position of neutrality. The most pressing problem in addiction is the problem of the mind. The problem of the body is once I start, I cannot stop. The problem of the mind is once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. Bill promises in step 10 that we are placed in a position of neutrality. We have a protective shield of the spirit. We have entered the world of the spirit. Our mind is now not vulnerable to the obsession. And since we are not going to be inclined to think about our addiction, we are not going to engage in it. And then there's the problem of the will. The problem of the will really is the biggest of them all. This is a mental obsession, the compulsive and irrational thinking that drives an addict to use despite the negative consequences they experience. The will and the mind of an addict will manipulate and make excuses to justify using, leading us to believe that this time it will be different, or that we can control our addiction. Even when we're aware of the harm using causes us, we are still unable to resist that urge. This obsession, the obsession of the will, blocks out the rational thoughts, making it difficult for us to break free from the cycle of addiction through willpower alone. So again, the body is once I start, I cannot stop. Even if our alcohol use upends our lives and the lives of those around us, I still can't stop. One is too many, but 100 is not enough. Controlling the amount consumed or how much we use, such as in process addiction, becomes impossible once the cycle is initiated. So with that first drink, or that first bite, or that first shot, the cycle starts. We have no control. And then the problem of the mind, once I stop, I cannot stay stopped. That refers to the addict's experience of an inability to consistently control their using once they start. Even when we intend to stop, telling ourselves this time will be different, or I can stop now, or if I have just one bite, I won't want another, or one drink, I'm just going to have one drink. I've learned that lesson. So Bill talks about how many thousands of men and women have recovered. And notice that I said recovered, used in the past tense. Pay attention to the book. Bill uses that term consistently, not recovery or recovering. He consistently uses the term recovered. And what does that mean? I mean, people say once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, right? Well, the early members of AA who authored the big book viewed recovered as a description of their current state of abstinence in freedom from the compulsion to drink. They believed they had been cured of the disease of alcoholism through the program. So it signifies a state of freedom from active addiction, emphasizing the transformative power of the program in achieving sobriety and neutralizing the allergy. But it's not recovered of the mind and the will. Bill emphasized that reaching and maintaining this as a position of neutrality requires commitment to a recovery program, including the 12 steps, and cultivating a strong spiritual relationship. It's a state that is achieved through continued effort and a fundamental shift in one's relationship with substances or processes. It takes time to achieve physical sobriety. Bill says, we are not cured. We have our daily reprieve. This is referring to the unmanageability of life again. Bill uses the term daily reprieve to describe the state of sobriety achieved by individuals in recovery. It signifies that while addiction is a chronic relapsing condition, we can experience a daily reprieve from its grip by maintaining a healthy spiritual condition or relationship. The reprieve is not a cure, but rather a temporary suspension of the compulsion to drink, contingent on ongoing spiritual practices and a connection with a higher power in order to address our unmanageability. And we'll be looking at the body and the mind. When I start, I cannot stop. When I stop, I cannot stay stopped. This is an admission that we have a physical allergy and a mental obsession. The physical inability to control using once the addiction is consumed or used. One drink, one morsel of food, one too many movies. It triggers a powerful, uncontrollable craving for more. They call this disease the disease of more, making it virtually impossible for the addict to stop. The once I start, I cannot stop experience signifies a complete loss of our control over our addiction once the first sip, bite, usage is taken. The addict, despite any intentions or previous resolutions, cannot regulate their usage once it begins. The physical craving is often accompanied by a mental obsession, where the addict's mind is dominated by thoughts of using, even in the face of severe negative consequences and a large desire to stop. We're still obsessed. I've actually seen people smoking on an oxygen machine because they just can't kick it. And I've also seen people, say things like, can you believe they're still smoking and they're, have lung cancer and this and that? And I think, can you believe the strength of addiction? That's how powerful it is. That first usage of substance or process, it just sets it off. It ignites a craving that is an insane compulsion to consume more at whatever the cost. More. I can't tell you how many times I have begun a night where I was going to have one snack or one movie or look at my phone for 5 minutes, and before I know it, the night would be gone. But it's the first hit that does the most damage, not the second or the 12th. Because once I start, I can't stop. Or once I stop, I can't stay stopped. The inability to stop is part of what defines an addict. This is what Herb says is the best kept secret in the rooms, in all of the rooms. Most people don't understand the depth of our brokenness. Although my free will is free, in some areas, it's not free. Bill W. termed this unmanageability. So my will is free, but not everywhere. Bill also says we're not cured. We have that daily reprieve. It's very contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. He says we need to apply our way of living, which is a code in the big book. He uses that term, our way of living, more than 20 times throughout the book. So our way of living, steps 1 through 9 is how we get our recovery. Steps 10, 11, and 12 is our way of staying in that status, dealing with our spiritual malady, dealing with our unmanageability. You can look all that up on page 64. But resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. It's the totality. So in Bill's first 4 years with the Oxford group, he came across a group called the Washingtonians, who had solved the drink problem 100 years earlier and had 400,000 members in the 1800s. 400,000. They only lasted about 10 years because they decided to put their efforts into and become more involved in politics and women's rights and slavery, and they just became very political. And Bill saw it as a problem, and he actually took one of the 12 traditions from them, which was the anonymity. The group's first choice through the group conscience for the book that Bill named the big book was The Way Out as the title of the book. But when Bill found out there were already 12 books with the same name, he said, I'll be damned if I'll be the 13th. In the first few years, it was like a secret society, like a speakeasy with an escort. You had to know someone to get in. You'd be name dropping at the door. But they had to keep it a secret because it was in such high demand. So this explains a little bit why Herb decides to start with step 12 and then step 11, because he believes that this is the heart of the matter. This is our way of living. So when Herb decided he'd start with step 12 and then 11 and 10, he believes it's the heart of the matter. This is our way of living, to do spot checking, to do a daily inventory so that you can clear your channel. Our antidote to disturbance is clearing our channel. So on the spot, when I'm disturbed, it is due to my misalignment with reality. And I often ask myself, how are my feet moving today? My behavior tells me where I'm at. So from Chuck C's book, A New Pair of Glasses, the lenses that I have been wearing they were warped. They were skewed. They had no sense of true reality. It was my reality, but not the reality. But I wanted a new vision, like I wanted new glasses. I was in a state of delusion. I was warped at times and demented, as Herb would say. Delusion determined my thoughts and actions. So we need to clear the channel. The channel is like a big whiteboard. Of course, that didn't exist back in the big book inception days, but so we need to clear the channel with our new visions and our new view. And the way we clear the channel is with the step 10 spot check repeatedly, as this is the antidote. And I think I've mentioned that there is a step 10 inventory website that you can go to and you just fill it in, and you can even print it if you want. So we want to clear the channel because we're the channel of God. We're the channel of hope. We're a channel of light. We need to keep that clear. And we need to stay in reality. And the way we stay in reality is at night, we go over our day and we see how it went and we see where it went wrong. And we make amends if we need to, but we get up the next day and we start again with a new channel. And we fill the channel with prayer and meditation so we can get consciously closer to our higher power. Bill's point of step 11 was guidance in the morning. To start your day with a check-in with your higher power, and to invite your source to guide your day so that you stay in orbit around the light. And then we take all that we have, add it into our full spiritual container, and we give it back. So we fill it up and we give it back. We help out a fellow or anyone really. We give it back wherever we can be gracious. And it doesn't have to be monumental. It could be as simple as returning your grocery cart back to the store, or seeing somebody distressed and reaching a hand out. Can I help you? It's to be helpful and kind and grateful. To be in that light. We walk around all day shining under that light. So experience with step 1 confirms that we have a problem of the body, mind, and will. But that is what makes us human. What makes like no other being on the planet is that we have free will and we have the ability of choice. We can go right or we can go left. We can stay, we can get up, we can go. We have lots of choices because of the free will. And this civilization is based on free will. But we also have a mind that is deficient and vulnerable to obsession. And we have a body that is vulnerable and defective. And it is usually a genetic disposition. This is the heart of the problem. My mind, my own self-centeredness, my will always choose me. And this is the spiritual malady, which is why we are never cured of self-centeredness. Going forward, these are foundational, so we will spend a few weeks on each, the body, the will, and the mind. But that's the spiritual malady that we get up with every day, and we want that great reprieve. So this is also in Bill's own handwriting. This is the original 6-step program that Bill started. And this was in the pioneering period of Alcoholics Anonymous before the publication of the big book. And the founders, there were a few people involved, developed a program of recovery consisting of 6 steps. The 12 steps, as we know them today, were written especially for the big book, as discussed in Bill W.'s official AA biography on page 196 and 197. When Bill was writing the big book, he came to a place that had been a barrier in his own mind and had given him considerable worry. He had to set down the actual program for the alcoholic to follow, and he wanted to make it as powerful as possible. He had a great fear that the message might be misunderstood by alcoholics in distant places. It was one thing to pass on the message face to face, when one could personally observe the other's reaction and be present to respond or have rejection or questions. In print, there's no second chance. The basic material for the chapter was the word of mouth program that Bill had been talking about ever since his own recovery. It was very heavy with the Oxford group principles and had, in addition, some of the ideas Bill had gleaned from William James and Dr. Southworth. Moreover, Bill had worked with Dr. Bob and other alcoholics in testing and sifting the workability and effectiveness of the early program. While he would be the nominal author of the 5th chapter, he was in fact serving as spokesman for all the others. According to Bill, their word of mouth program had thus far been a pretty consistent procedure containing the 6 steps to achieve and maintain their sobriety. There is no evidence that Oxford Group had such a specific program, yet the Oxford Group ideas pervade in these original 6 steps, as Bill listed them. 1, we admitted that we were licked, that we were powerless over alcohol. 2, we made a moral inventory of our defects of sin. 3, we confessed or shared our shortcomings with another person in confidence. 4, we made restitution to all those harmed by our drinking. 5, we tried to help other alcoholics with no thought of reward in money or prestige. 6, we prayed to whatever God we thought there was for power to practice these precepts. So that was the beginning of how Bill came about the 12 steps. And I'm not going to go into the deep discussion about the ins and outs of the workings of the process of making the big book. I think there's more important work to do, but all of Herb's work will go through that very explicitly if you want to learn more about some of the ins and outs of it all. On December 11th, 1934, Bill showed up at the hospital drunk. On the 12th, Ebby shows up and talks him through the 6 steps of the Oxford group. Bill detoxes in the hospital. In his second day in, he is still detoxing, but having had some exposure to the Oxford group, even though he would arrive drunk, he did those 6 steps. And on the next day, he had his mountaintop spiritual mystical experience, which is on page 14 in the big book. Bill gets very clear about the problem of the mind and describes it on pages 23 to 43, which we will look at later. But Bill is very clear that he must carry his message to another alcoholic. He later feels such defeat. He had been working with alcoholics for 6 months and had not saved a single man. He decides he wants to give it up and go back to Wall Street. And he tells his wife Lois of his decision and how he hasn't gotten a single person to be sober. She just looks up at him with love in her face and love in her voice and says, "Bill, you're sober." For the first time, Bill understood that it wasn't about getting other people sober. It was about turning from the self-centeredness to other-centeredness that would keep him sober, because it established a relationship with power. He met with Dr. Silkworth, who tells Bill to stop with his mountaintop experience and stop talking about God and your alcoholism. He says instead, talk about your powerlessness in your body. Talk about the allergy that once you start, you cannot stop. And about how once you stop, you cannot stay stopped. That everything you've tried was not working. And that's what Bill did. He hit the road with his story and headed for Akron, Ohio. So we had these questions last week. Where is my life not working? How effective are my efforts? Do I really want to change? What changes would I like? What is the invitation? I hope you guys gave this some thought because it's really important to understand why we do what we do, especially in work that's this important. You really want to reflect on it, and you might even want to reflect on it occasionally throughout the whole series. But ask yourself, where is my life not working? Ask all these questions. You don't even have to answer them, but just be aware of them. Make a conscious effort to think about them. Remember my story? Chained to my fear, suffering, it permeated my every thought and decision. I thought the issue was out there in the world, and I even tried to manipulate and change the outside world unsuccessfully, but being an overachiever that I am, I didn't quit. I kept trying. And the pain grew and my dysfunction grew all around me. It increased. And then I got the worst news. And the worst news was that I was the source of my pain. I made it look like I was in bondage, but I was dragging around my own chains. They were my creation. But it was also the best news. Because if the pain and suffering was coming from me, then I could do something about it. I was holding the chains. I could let them go. And that was the big major turnaround in my life. The realization that I wasn't chained to the fear or the suffering or all the horrible things that were happening. And it wasn't the world around me. It was coming from me. I was the creator of my miserable life. I made the decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of my creator as I grow to understand that. And it is about growth, and it's expanding and broadening my mind, opening myself up in faith that I'm able to survive whatever comes. I'm supported, and this is my path, the path of freedom, living in the life. This is where the 12 steps has brought me to a place where my goal is faith. Every morning I wake up, my goal is to have faith. And I spend the majority of my day in that faith because that's my choice. I choose the light over the dark. You? Do we have anybody that would like to make a comment, have questions, anything at all? I must be a good explainer because nobody's got a hand up. Nobody? Michelle, are you raising your hand? Come on down.
I really, having just spent today at 2 airports, I really identified with that comment you made about, changing other people and institutions. And I thought, oh, I have so much recovery. And the luggage was going around the belt when I got off, and it was going too fast. And I use a cane, and I was trying to grab my luggage and I knew I was going to fall. So I'm using my cane to bat my luggage. And instead of just going, maybe I should see if I could ask somebody for help, or no, I went over to this woman and said, do you work here? And she said, yes, I work for Alaska Airlines. And I said, that belt is too fast for people who have disabilities. And she goes, oh, thank you for telling me. And I walked away. And for a minute, I thought, yeah, it'll get changed. And then I thought, who are you kidding? She was not sitting around all day waiting for someone to come up and tell her how to fix things so life would be better at this little airport. Nothing's, it's not going to change. And so what I have to do, I mean, my life wasn't working at that moment because I needed my luggage and I couldn't get it off the belt. And expecting that I will change other people, and then, that's my self-centeredness. And what I need to figure out is for next time is maybe I need to get there to the luggage part sooner and see if there's somebody there that I can ask to help me, because the world is not going to stop and change for me. And I walk out of those situations and I want to use my substance because they haven't valued what I've said. I don't feel like, why don't you listen to me? And it's this whole thing about what in my life is not working, how effective are my efforts? Not effective when I expect to change everybody else. So I'm glad you brought that up about outside people and institutions.
That's a fantastic story too, because it's a perfect example of, here is this outside world working the way it works, and I want to go in, one person out of a million that walk through that airport, and I'm going to change their procedure because that's how big my ego is.
Right, exactly.
And then unfortunately, it doesn't work out the way you want, and you want to use. So, it's a no-win situation. So now you have to fly home, and you're going to have to tell us how you get home in a different state of mind. I'll remember. Thank you for sharing. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, I'm Nancy in Michigan. And Lisa, I just had to look at my codependency with my brother when you mentioned smoking on oxygen machine. And he's still smoking at 75. And I know what people used to say. Can you believe it? He's still smoking. In fact, my mom would say that to me all the time when she was still alive. And by then I'd had, some Al-Anon under my belt. So I knew it was a crazy thought. And right now my brother is the, hang on, I'm trying to get there, I want to get your picture. Okay, so my brother is smoking, may have cancer, definitely has COPD. And I have to really take a look at my codependency. And to always remember what he does with his body is none of my business. So I really appreciated that. I had another thing you talked about that, boy, I loved it. You said, most people don't understand the depth of their own brokenness. And that is so true of my life. And what I've looked at through the 12 steps, and just until we get in a program like this, we just don't understand the depth of it and how much support we need. And I just feel I'm here. I'm going to work through my steps on Debtors Anonymous while I'm here this year. And I just feel that it's one of my first addictions, my overspending and spending. So that's what I'm going to be working on. And I just guess I wanted to report that. So thank you.
That's a great idea. And I'll tell you, working on the 12 steps is going to affect all addictions. And as probably most people in the room can attest, we have multiples. So when we focus on the 12 steps instead of the addiction at hand, there are addiction group meetings that you go to, but when you're really focusing on the 12 steps, which is the solution, the problem takes a back seat, and then it actually gets taken care of through the 12-step work.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I
Thanks-
really
thanks for your
enjoyed your talk
comments.
tonight. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, Carol.
Oh, hi. Um, yes, I really enjoyed the presentation tonight. And I have to say that I had an experience similar to Rachel's because we were going out for dinner tonight, and Tuesday night we go out for dinner with my son, and last week we had this beautiful table. It was outdoors, it was right by this lake, and it was wonderful. And I thought to myself, you know what? I am going to go into that restaurant and I'm going to run back to the patio and see if that table is available. And if it is, I am going to tell them that I want that table. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute. Whoa, what are you doing? How arrogant is that? And I thought, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to say, I had a table last week and I really liked it. And do you think it's available now? And it was. So I just wanted to express that.
So you're attesting that when you put things in your higher power's hands, they work out wonderful? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
That's what I'm hearing.
That's exactly right.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Hi, Rita.
Hi, Lisa, I'd like to say your pages are just amazing. I can just imagine how much time you spent on preparing. It just really added. When you began tonight, you were talking about hearing. And I think it's been 3 years now since I've had hearing aids. And I'm one that if I have an issue, I do look for a solution. Because when one word is missed in a sentence or a paragraph, it can change the meaning of that sentence, and that a misunderstanding can occur. And I realized that when COVID hit and people were behind plexiglass and they were wearing masks, I didn't realize how much I'd been relying on reading lips. So anyways, I did go to an audiologist to get hearing aids, which I love because right now I'm on Bluetooth. So if I need to go around, this is all very private. So if I'm where someone else in the house is, it's that. For instance, I've heard how it works or the reading of the step, how many times one word can make such a difference. I should grab the book. It's not a result of these steps. It is the result of these steps.
Exactly.
And recently I saw it printed and I went, I've always been just rattling it off. It's a result. And so that's a pretty powerful switch from A to the result.
Mhm.
And other people have mentioned, asking, well, I'm going to look at it from this perspective of asking for what I need. Because of my hearing, when I do go into a restaurant, which is rare, I don't usually eat out, I have a wall behind me. So if someone's speaking to me, at least it can bounce off. And I was with my sponsor in a fairly noisy restaurant, and the server came over and said, how can I help you? And I said, the music is really quite loud. Is it possible to have it turned down a bit? He said, I'll look into that. So he did. He actually went over to where he went over. He turned it up, and then he actually turned it right off. Now, that's not what I asked.
Wow.
But you know what? Because there was so many families and whatnot, everyone's busy talking that you can actually hear each other. So sometimes, I actually think it's okay to ask for what I need. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But that's just a recent experience of mine. And so, but I'll let it go at that. I see other hands are up. And thank you so much for your,
Thank you, Rita. And you know, I always ask because just to get it out there, you know, there's always the possibility, whatever way it's supposed to turn out, that the end result's not in my hands, but the asking the question is.
absolutely.
You let the end result go, but you put your thoughts in and you put your question in and you see where it lands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great job.
And you know what? I've not in this instance, but in other instances, I've had someone look over and go, people have said, thank you. Because they too were trying to yell at the person
Yeah.
across from them. Anyways, I'll let that go. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Thanks.
Hey, Sarah.
Oh, hello. Are you hearing me?
I am hearing you.
Okay. I wanted to just make a comment on, well, actually, many of your comments, but the one you made about I'm finding that I am the reason for my problems. That is so true. When I was younger, it was always outside of myself, somebody else's fault. But no, my problems with I'm an overeater. Um, that is because of I have choices to make, and recently, 2 weeks ago, I had a bad fall, and I broke all 3 bones in my right arm. So I'm currently in bed in a rehab center, trying to get things healed up on my right side. And I think back to when I had the fall, and I made a poor decision. I didn't have enough support when I was pulling off knee-high support stocking, and I just went flying backwards and really took a bang on my right shoulder and my arm, whatever. So I oftentimes lately I think, I have choices to make, and there are consequences to my choices. And lots of times I make good choices, or good things happen to me because maybe it's my higher power answering my prayers. Anyway, I am finding that I am the root of most of my problems. It's not the rest of the world around me. It's how I'm reacting to the world. And I guess I'm grateful to the 12 steps for teaching me that. And that's why I'm repeating the 12-step program again. That's to answer one of the questions. Why am I here, and why am I doing this again? I've done it several times, only once with Herb K, but other times with other codependency and food issues. But each time I find that I need the reinforcement. All I have is a daily reprieve, and each time that I go through the process of the 12 steps, I learn something more about myself, and
Yep.
it's just kind of a growth experience. I just have to do it more than once. So anyway, I just
Well,
want to say thank you.
You know what, Sarah, you're not alone in that. And a lot of people think that the 12-step process is a singletary process. It is
Yeah.
not. It is a way of living, which
Mhm.
means each time we go through the steps and we go into them as deep as we can, we do peel off a lot of layers that are blocking the light.
That's right.
But as we go
That's
through
right.
each new set of steps, it is a new way. We have new eyes every time we do those 12 steps.
That's right.
It's a process that once we begin recovery, we will want to continue to do, because the more we do it, the closer we get to our higher power. Each
Yeah,
time
that's
it's
right.
closer.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's no recommended amount. There's not, some people actually think you do it once, one and done, you're all done. No. You wouldn't understand the steps if you only did it once. It takes quite a bit of time. There's a lot in there. And with each session that you go through those 12 steps, you're going to have more and more experiences that lead you to that spiritual awakening, which doesn't stop then once you have that awakening. Now you run with it and you just keep going. It just keeps expanding.
Mm.
So keep
Thank
coming
you.
back.
I will.
And I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mhm.
Irene,
Lisa, may I interrupt for a minute?
you sure can.
This is Susan. I know me and Mark have been up there with our hands up for quite a while, and people keep coming in later and getting called on.
Okay,
you
let's
see
do
that?
that.
Do
No,
you see that?
I have a different view of who comes up.
Oh,
I have no problem if you're next. Irene, can you hold tight for a minute? Okay. All right, Susan, why don't you go ahead? And I apologize for that.
okay. I was wondering if you saw me there and
I
Mark, for
do see you,
example.
but I have a different lineup than other people do. So you definitely could have been out of turn, but go
Okay.
ahead.
Maybe I'm seeing the wrong lineup. Sorry. But
That's
anyhow,
okay.
okay, great. I have a question about the substance addiction versus the process addiction.
Okay.
The way I think of the substance is drugs, alcohol, food, and smoking, and then all the rest are processed. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, there's probably a lot out there that I'm not even thinking of, but
Well, the
basically,
main
if you put it in your body, it's a
substance.
substance. If you don't, it's a process.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then the slide that says process users 5 in 10 and substance users 1 in 10. Does that mean out of addicts, 5 out of 10 are process users and 1 out of 10
Yes.
are substance?
Yes.
Wow.
No, actually, I'm sorry. It's 1 out of 10 people has a substance
In the
abuse problem
population.
in the general population.
General population.
And then 5 out of 10 have a process
Oh.
addiction. And I can tell you the number one culprit is the cell phones that everybody can't let.
Oof.
So that really drives the numbers up.
Wow.
You know, we're even seeing children walking around with them because their addicted parents don't want to deal with them. So,
Okay. I
yeah,
had no idea. I'm a process addict and not a substance, but it just seemed like every program that I've been in, the majority are alcohol and drug addicts. So I thought that was the majority or food or the
no,
substance
it
addicts.
used to be that way. And
Uh-huh.
also to add to that, most people don't see their process addiction as an addiction because they're not ingesting something. They think in
Yeah.
order to be an addict, you have to shoot up or drink too much. And
Mm.
that's 100% not the way it is. And obviously with the change of people going to cell phones and not landlines and all that has changed the way people are doing things now. So yeah, the numbers are skyrocketing. It's probably
Mm.
bigger than that at this point.
Yeah, just growing and growing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
and
the internet.
I will reiterate that whatever your addiction is that gets you to this room is not important. Because what I say is we all have an addiction problem. We're all addicts, whatever it is, it's really not important. What's important is that we find that spiritual awakening so that we're no longer addicted to anything.
Yeah. And that's what I love about Herb K. All of us coming together with no particular affiliation other than addiction.
Yes.
And, the programs that I come from, like in contrast to AA, for example, we have 12 tools. Not only the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, the 12 concepts, but 12 tools. And in Debtors Anonymous, if you're in Business Debtors Anonymous, then you have 12 Debtors Anonymous tools and 12 Business Debtors Anonymous tools. You have 24 tools. I mean, so the focus can easily go off the step work because
Well,
the steps is
absolutely.
only one of
Absolutely,
those
yeah.
36 tools,
Exactly.
So I appreciate just
And
coming in here and
the recovery is going to come from the spiritual awakening.
yeah.
The 12 steps are going to get you there. And all that other stuff is really great for running a meeting or for having people share experiences and all that. But this is a little different than that. This is more of a workshop. It's not like a talk meeting. It's different.
And I'm just thinking right now, like it could be seen, what it would appear to be to me now is doing the steps is the meat of the program. And then the tools, I work the tools to help me as I recover using the steps
Exactly.
regain my life.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
Yes.
wow.
And you know, we
Yeah.
have to be doing something as we're going along because we have free will. So we've got to be engaged in our recovery also. We can't do it alone. We do it with God, but we do it together. We're co-creating. But we're not the power. So there
Yeah.
are things like an inventory that, that's something that we're going to do. We'll get to that at some point, but that's on us. We have to do that inventory
Yeah.
to get closer to our higher power.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for commenting. All right, so I have Irene next, unless somebody tells me
It's
otherwise.
actually
Mark is next.
Mark has been
Okay,
up
Mark,
there.
come on down, Mark.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mark, I belong here. I think I had more of like a comment, and it was kind of interesting that when I first signed up for this workshop, I got to be honest, I had like some shifts every single day up until our session, and then it's been interesting. Like the last 7 days have been a lot of unmanageability that I could identify with when I was listening to some of the shares earlier. But really, it's been a long week of really seeing, um, unmanageability in my life and just people getting on my nerves. So it's been really interesting. I didn't really notice exactly what it was until I was listening to you talk tonight. Like I was thinking that, like because I did a step 5 and, one of my main programs. I mean, I qualify for pretty much like a lot, but I'm really kind of focused on my money now. And so I do like weekly inventories, and I was still like, everybody's getting on my nerves. And then when I came tonight, I realized it's just like this deep unmanageability that I'm seeing from the addiction. And it was so funny because like up until the first session, it was kind of like walking with God, like these really profound God shots. And then the last 7 days, it's really been a lot of like people in traffic, people at work, my friends, family members, just everybody is bleeping. And I'm still doing like the same stuff. And it was interesting because it really is just like the addiction kicking my ass, really. So that was sort of like what was coming up for me, and I found it, and I didn't really get that it's really like, I know we're not supposed to be really talking about step 1, but like that when the after the M dash, like that whole part, like unmanageable, like that's what it's been like the last 7 days. And I sit, and when you started talking, like right at 8:30, I was like, oh shit, like that's what it is. It's just complete unmanageability. Should I continue to act out financially? And I'll leave it there. Yeah, thanks.
I think, Mark, I think that's fantastic that you're having that experience because if you don't have that experience, you wouldn't have a whole lot of direction to go in. So I think you're in a great place, and I hope you continue. And you're going to see all of that turn around quite a bit when we get into the higher numbered steps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Irene.
Yeah. Hi, Irene. I'm in a food addict, and the first time that I did her K workshop, it blew me away. Finally, I had when he said that this is a spiritual solution, not a three aspect solution. It's a spiritual solution. And for me, that was finally, because it was always puzzling me. I understand that my addiction, that my problem is threefold. I understand that I have a body problem, I have a psychological issues there, and I have a spiritual issue. I understand that I can see the three things. But then I was asked to work on the three things. That was the vocabulary that was used, in the rooms, that I had to work on these three things. And I would say, if I could actually work on my addiction, I wouldn't be here. If I could actually do anything on these things, I wouldn't be here. Second, if my default way of facing things is food, I cannot do anything with my psychological, mental stuff. I cannot. And since I cannot put down the food, clearly I cannot work on my psychological thing. The only thing I really can do, that was clear to me, is to say, I give up pretending that I can control anything. It's up to you, God. That was, and that's a spiritual passage. That when I say not me, but you, then I let him get his power to relieve from my addiction, to help me out facing the psychological thing. But the only real action that I can do is a spiritual action. It was like a aha for me finally, because otherwise it looked like I had three things to do, and I could do the spiritual. I mean, I've always been sensitive to that, but finally it was clear to me, if you don't do this, the other two. I spent a lifetime trying to control and work on my physical addiction. That's the only thing I wanted. I mean, that's why I ended up in the rooms, that I wanted to stop eating in this crazy way. And if I could do anything about that in these three actions that I had to take, why should I be here? I would have done it. I really tried, but I didn't have control over that. So what kind of work can I do if I have no control? If I have no power? So this is something always that I made always a big point every time I go back to the meetings. And I say, well, this is a spiritual thing. If we don't go there, or when I hear people that say, finally I fixed the problem, etc., because the spiritual thing is a little difficult for me. What did you fix? What did you fix? What I believe is, if there is a real abstinence, maybe they don't even realize exactly that they have taken some spiritual. And anyhow, it's not my business. God can do what he wants, the way he wants. And, but for me, that must be clear, must be repeated and clear. Otherwise, I'm still kidding myself that I can do something about fixing my addiction. So I just thank you for kind of saying it like number 2 class.
Yeah, and what's going to happen is you're going to co-create. God's not going to step in and do it by himself. It's not going to happen. We have free will, so that's not the option. So your option is that you're going to work with your higher power. That's the power that you gain, is the ability to work with your higher power.
Yeah, and that to me, I am very clear. Then it becomes manageability, because I work with God, and that's my work in which I manage. That's my,
So
all the rest I don't manage. Absolutely.
So when your unmanageability kicks in and you start eating because you're coping, what's going to happen is you're going to stop eating, because now you're depending on something that's more powerful than you or your eating. Does that make sense? So that's the recovery path that you'll be on. Is you won't have those crushing desires to eat your emotions, so to speak, because you'll be connected beyond that.
And thank God I've been abstinent now. I've been 18 years in FA and abstinent, fully abstinent more than 5 years. But that was the passage that had to happen. I mean, that was the thing that had to happen.
Yeah.
Because there is a way still of being in the rooms and managing somehow the addiction, do all the things.
Yep.
That lasts until, and I always kind of was twisting a little and trying, then reaching absolute cruel honesty and just let go. Then it became possible to work with him, and I became abstinent. And,
yeah. I mean, you can have a little bit of freedom with abstinence, or you can have complete freedom with abstinence. The choice is up to how much are you willing to put the work in to get to that spiritual space where you can have total freedom. Thank you, Irene.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Ania? Hope I said that right.
Yeah, you did, but I think Kristen was first.
Okay. Kristen,
Hey, everybody. Lisa, I just wanted to say thank you. I know we're just really running low on time, so
that's okay. Don't worry about it.
I didn't, don't want to talk too long, but I guess, yeah, I just wanted to thank you and kind of that whole idea that other people have talked about, why are we here? And, I've been doing this 12-step work for many, many years, and I really look at it, the whole idea of what is a spiritual awakening. It's for most of us, it's that educational variety that takes place over a lifetime. And kind of like you talked so strongly about in the beginning, that it's so much the disease of the mind. And I didn't even realize how distorted my thinking was for so many years. And, even now more is revealed and I get more and more clarity and more is revealed. So I guess I kind of look at that my dedication to just continuing to do step work because it helps me because I sponsor people into programs. And, the more that I understand the steps and how do I apply them into my life, and more is revealed. I kind of feel like, I call it God with skin, that we're all God with skin to each other. And
Right.
I do believe that we get more clarity by listening to other people's experience, strength, and hope. Because everybody's as unique as a snowflake, and our life experience is different, and how we live the recovery program is different.
Yes.
The way, people talk about food plans. I mean, every single person is unique to them. I was never a Dr. Phil fan, but one thing I always liked about what he said is, how's it working for you? And to me, it's almost like, with our quote character defects or coping, whatever quote our ism is, all they are is coping mechanisms that we learned from a very young age how to cope with life, how to deal with feelings that we don't know how to deal with. Life was unmanageable. And so it's not that they're good or bad, because I know shame is a huge issue for so many people. It's more the idea of like, oh, was it working? And it probably did work. And that's why we did it. None of us are stupid.
Yeah.
And
There's no blame. There's no criticism. Absolutely not. Yeah. It was coping mechanism.
Exactly. And so it's not that we're bad and wrong. It's more like, well, I'm realizing that these are not working very well anymore. And they're basically what, the big book talks about, shutting me off from the sunlight of the spirit. When I'm so, habitual in my thoughts and in the way that I live and it's not working,
Right.
closed from being able to be open. So I really appreciate you willing to give all this time and service. It's really a gift. So I just want to say thank you. And hello to
Thank you for commenting. I appreciate you being here.
thank you.
Okay, Ania.
Okay, I'll just try to make this quick. So, my name is Ania, and I'm a food and drug addict. So, fantastic workshop. Thank you very much for your knowledge. It's amazing. Your logic and everything is so clear. And one of the things that I was listening to today was about, I know it's not about the first step, but you said powerlessness is the problem, not addiction. And, there was a little situation today where I was rushing for a hospital appointment. I was being late. I thought I'd be, I'll be courteous and I'll let them know that I'm running about 10 minutes late. Anyway, when I rang them, they weren't very happy about me being 10 minutes late. And my whole body just went into panic and into, what do you mean? And they were saying, I need to reschedule. And I go, I've been traveling for an hour. What do you mean you got to reschedule, but it was sort of like, it was amazing how affected I was by my powerlessness in this situation. It could have gone either way. As it turned out, I did get the test, but, it could have gone either way. And I was so surprised at how, upset I was about the whole thing. And, And, you know, like powerlessness for me is just, you know, it's a huge thing. And in so many little ways like that. Yeah, so yeah, I just thought that was really sort of interesting.
We all struggle with the concept of powerlessness because we're all struggling with being in control. That's
Yeah.
one of the first things that we grab for is control when life doesn't seem like it's doing what we want it to. So
Yeah.
the concept of being powerless is like a very foreign agent to our brains. It's like, no, we can't be powerless. We have
Yeah.
to be in control because we have to survive. And at some point
Yeah.
in our life, survival meant I have to be as in control as I can be to escape whatever's happening.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a time and place for all of that. But like you said, you get to a place where you're not in control of whether or not you have the appointment, and you can get all upset and freak out and stress yourself out and probably die young, and that's your choice. Or you can choose to see it as I'm not in control of this, and I can either have you know, a crappy time about it, or I can turn around and say, okay, I don't know. I don't know what the bigger picture is, but I'm going to leave because clearly it's time to go. Because we don't
Yeah, I mean,
know the bigger
it's
picture.
usually what I do, I must say. I've
Yeah.
been for some reason, not today. And I remember, going through a 7-step previously, and the biggest discovery that I had is that I would never be perfect. I would never react perfectly to situations. There would be situations like this one today where I wasn't quite happy with my reaction about it, and I'm powerless over that too.
Right.
So
Exactly. Exactly. You're powerless over all of it. You're powerless over everything,
yeah,
with the exception of your reaction to how life plays itself out.
yeah, yeah.
It's a goal. It's not a, it's a goal that we try to attain. It's not like, okay, I'm going to go to the grocery store and grab a pack of powerlessness because it's on sale. It doesn't work that way. It takes
Uh,
time. It takes practice.
that's right.
It takes faith.
Yeah, thank
Ultimately.
you.
Thank you. Okay, so if everybody's good, does anyone have any more questions or any comments that need to be addressed? So your homework will go out probably tomorrow or the next day. And the recording should go up because we did actually record tonight, which we didn't last week, but we're learning as we go, so bear with us. And I'm just going to end with the serenity prayer. That's my favorite. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And everybody just keep looking towards the light, because that's where this journey is headed. So keep your eye on the prize. We're all going to get closer and closer as the weeks go by. And thank you everyone for coming.
Lisa,